Well, hello, sports fans. Larry Eater, RunBlogRun. I'm in San Jose, California. The good-looking guy in the middle, Stuart Weir. He's in Oxford, England, the intellectual capital of the world. This is Athletics Chat, your favorite online programming. And this is Athletics Chat 72. Stuart, greetings and salutations.
Hello.
How are you doing this fine evening?
Well, it's raining this fine evening, but parts not. But then we're probably used to that in England. I don't suppose it's raining where you are.
We just had our first rain in 8 months. It started yesterday, and so it was well needed. It kept some of the fires, cut some of the fires back a little bit too. So it's just nice to feel that in the air, and so it keeps it kind of exciting. But we've got some topics tonight, and
I'm glad we have.
We do. And so let's start with actually, the one I want to start with is two Kenyan athletes were murdered this week. And it sounds like domestic violence. Agnes Tirop and then a woman sprinter. Agnes is the woman who ran a 30:01 for the 10K recently at an Adidas event held in their headquarters in Hersno-Garach. The other woman was a sprinter, and then there was also an athlete who made 8 world cross country teams who committed suicide. So just the highlights. I mean, the sadness. Domestic violence is obviously a global issue, and so is mental health. And we will be putting up some global suggestions for people who are looking for information or help on those issues on RunBlogRun. I'll get those up this week, but it's just sad, and it is. And then the first topic we had on our big list tonight was 6 highlights and 4 shocks from the Olympics. So take it away, Stuart.
Well, I think that just the way it happened, the 2 400 hurdles races, which were on consecutive days, last event of the morning session, and Karsten Warholm broke the world record, 45:94. Poor old Rai Benjamin ran an American record and was well behind. It must be hard when you go out and run a national record, and then Warholm just goes faster. And then, I felt the same about the women's race, where Dalilah Muhammad broke the world record last year, and in the Olympic final, she runs faster than her world record, and she comes second. If you had said that to her the time she broke the world record, well, you'll break it again in the Olympic final, but you'll lose, I don't think she would have believed you. But Sydney McLaughlin, 51:46 for a world record, and Femke Ball third, breaking the European record, 52:03. So, just to have such a phenomenal race with 3 athletes all running ridiculously fast times, and in a way, both Sydney and Femke, in a way, being new kids on the block to some extent.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
that's true.
Really fascinating. Then the women's flat 400, Shawnee Miller-Weigel winning that in a national record. But Alison Felix, it's no end to Alison Felix. One goes back to 2004 Olympics, and she's winning a medal in 2021. 17 years later, she's winning a 400 medal. And the 2 1500s were fascinating races as well. And probably not hard to predict. Would Jakob Ingebrigtsen or Timothy Chariot come out on top? And of course, it was over 3.5 minutes. It was just down to just over half a second with Ingebrigtsen holding off Timothy. And from a British point of view, great to see Josh Kerr coming in and taking the bronze with a PR. Now, most people would have thought that a Brit was going to challenge for a medal. It would have been Jake Whiteman, but it was in fact Josh Kerr. And of course, you did a talk with Josh. So what did you make of him?
I think Josh is an exceptional talent. I think one of the stories and one of the things I'm working on right now is that Josh is quoted as saying that he and his coach, Danny Mackey, put the plan together for Tokyo 2 years ago. And I know Danny Mackey fairly well, the Brooks Beast coach. And Josh is one of those athletes who came from heaven for him. Josh was a pretty good runner in high school, in college in the U.S. He wasn't the top, but he has talent and he's developed. Since 2015, he's been running, and with the Brooks Beast, I think he's really developed. I don't think he made a wrong move in any of the heats or the final in Tokyo. And I think he can run faster. I mean, I saw him run that solo 3:31 at Portland Memorial Day weekend in the U.S., that May 28, 29. And he was exceptional. He's a big guy. He looks like a midfielder for European football or for your rugby. And, he's, but very talented. Reminds me a little bit of Peter Snell and Herb Elliott, big guys who can take a lot of it. He's got great leg speed, amazing closing. He was within centimeters of running down Chariot. And, that was the thing.
Yeah.
I remember rewatching that race and going, oh my gosh, he could have
400 of a second behind Chariot.
Yeah. And it just, so it and not discounting, the Ingebrigtsen, Mr. Ingebrigtsen, his race was fabulous and he timed everything perfectly and he got the gold. And, and he's, but Josh has been around for a bit. He's got some wheels. He's got a good coach-athlete relationship. And I think we're going to see more things from him in the future.
Yeah. And then the women's 1500 was fascinating in different ways because Stefan Hassan was going for the treble. And of course, she won the 5 and the 10. But then there was Faith Kipyegon, who had won the previous Olympics, had won the next World Championship, but then had a daughter and had run a PR national record in Doha, but had been beaten. And then we were all hoping that Laura Muir might be able to finally get a championship medal. And in fact, Faith Kipyegon ran an Olympic record, Laura Muir ran a national record, and Stefan Hassan was just third. So again, a great race and lovely. I always like to see afterwards a bit of sports, well, I was going to say sportsmanship, sportspersonship, and to see Faith and Laura doing a lap of honour together was lovely.
Yeah.
And
no, I thought that was very cool. I also, it was interesting because this weekend, Stefan Hassan won the European Female Athlete of the Year. Karsten Warholm, of course, won the male athlete. But Stefan, her races at the 5 and the 10, she has that speed that she could just boom, boom when she needed to. In the 1500, she was tired, running all out. and she had two athletes in Laura and Faith that were just right on it. And Laura's race was fantastic, and it's just it's a big deal, and I think that it's if you were asking me what were the most exciting events of the Olympics, I have to say that both 400 hurdles, I have to say both 1500s, the women's 5 and 10. While you kind of knew that Stefan was there, it was great to watch him. It was like watching Kenenisa Bekele or Hailey at the top of their form, and it's just I just think that it's fantastic,
Yeah. I suppose if I had to choose one, I would go for the men's high jump, with Tamberi and Barsham each clearing 237 and deciding that they didn't want to jump off to decide the gold, but actually asking the official, can we have two golds? So yeah, that was an amazing time. And of course, Tamberi cannot do anything quietly. He's just such a showman and such a crowd pleaser. So
well, he's so good for the sport, Stuart.
Yeah.
One of the other things I like about Josh, do you know on his visa application, he puts athlete and entertainer?
Yeah.
And, when I talked to him about that, I interviewed him a few months ago. He really believes that for athletics to continue to grow, that the athletes have to understand that they're entertainers as well. And I think that he lives up to his thing. I thought the men's high jump, although, I love Steve Cram and Tim Hutchings. However, I'm not going to use the word, but however, they gave Tamberi a bit of grief, kind of like he was begging not to have a jump off and he wanted Mutaz. And I thought that my belief was that the reason why they tied was it was out of respect for each other. They were both exhausted and they knew this is what the event was about. And in looking at social media over the next several weeks, I got to say that 99% of it was positive. There were some people that said, well, why would someone tie? And there's that whole macho thing sometimes. And, it wasn't like Crammy and Ovette, duking it out and you're just going to have one or 8 guys in the 1500 with a lap to go. They're not going to do that. When Frank Shorter and Jack Batchelor, the two Americans, they tied in a 3 mile and I think a 6 mile at the AAU a couple times. And they did it to make a point that the big races were where they competed, and sometimes this was just a stepping stone. And still, the AAU officials said, well, Shorter, you're 1, Batchelor, you're 2, that kind of a thing. And so those things happen, but it was, in this generation, it was so unusual and also it was very organic. Mutaz is an incredible competitor. Tamberi, my gosh, he's phenomenal, and I just thought it was great. And then that moment afterwards when Tamberi and Marcel Jacobs hugged each other, I still love that. I mean, that was just, if that doesn't get a couple million Italian kids to come out for track and field, you don't know what will,
Yeah, what I loved too was Tamberi's next competition was in Lausanne, where he didn't win. And he
Yeah.
apologized to the crowd. He
Wow.
apologized to the crowd that he was not able to do justice to the competition, and promised to come back the following year and do better. So
Wow.
that's your entertainer.
Yeah, no, he's now doesn't his dad coach him?
I don't know.
I have, because his dad was a jumper, and I thought my Italian friends were telling me I'll have to do some research there.
Yeah.
He's someone I want to. I just don't know how good. How good is his English? Have you got to interview him?
Oh, good. It's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to reach out to some people, and I know who his agent is, and said,
yeah.
Yeah. So it's just, but no, there's so many things about this Olympics that made me smile. I really wish I could have been there, but I also know that health-wise and all those things, it just wasn't going to work. I enjoy being at the events with you and giving you trouble, and because that's part of the the whole landscape. But
well, it was very peaceful for me with you not being there.
Yeah, I know. Just think about it. You actually got some work done. Great stories and stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, so what were the 4 shocks from the Olympics for you?
Well, you just mentioned Marcel Jacobs, and I think you'd had a lot of guesses as to who was going to win the 100 meters before you came up with him. And again, I think if I asked you who was going to be the first American to finish, I'm not sure that Fred Curley would have been your man.
Nope. And my thing all season was that Fred wasn't in shape. I thought that Fred just decided, well, he couldn't get into 400 shape, so he'd do the 100 and 200. Boy, was I wrong,
Yeah, so I thought that was phenomenal because none of us saw that coming. And another one that nobody saw coming was, the 100 meters hurdle where 110 hurdles, where Grant Holloway just had to turn up and they'd give him the gold medal. But unfortunately, Hansel Parchment from Jamaica had not read the script. And, we did that piece about who's the outstanding hurdler of the year. Was it Grant Holloway for what he did early season? Was it Hansel because he won the Olympics? Or was it Devon Allen, who was just getting better and better over the last month of the season? And then my third one was the teenage 800-meter race. When we had, now I'm always very worried when I try to pronounce Attingmu's name because I've seen her say on social media that no one gets her name right. So I'm not quite sure whether that is right. Now, apologies if I've got you wrong. Winning from Keely Hodkinson, whom, frankly, I'm supposed to be your European, your British expert. This time last year, I'd not heard of her. And for those two, not only to get gold and silver, but to run 155s.
Yeah, no, it was, I thought that, talk about a race that lived up to the hype or surpassed it. A thing went out very, very hard. Keely ran her race. Gemma ran her race. Raven Rogers, oh my gosh, yeah, it just was. It was a very satisfying women's 800 meters.
Yeah, I mean, you just felt for Gemma as being the one who ran a phenomenally good race and came fourth, and therefore, because we have this thing about unless you win a medal, you're a failure. But one of the things I like about Gemma is a comment she made to me actually after Zurich, not after this. She said, well, I didn't do well enough, so I need to go away and talk to my coach Andy about what we need to do over the winter so that I'll be better next year. And isn't that a brilliant attitude to have if you just lost the race?
Oh, I think so too. It just, it's pretty amazing to me. how these athletes are so they analyze everything, which you would expect them to do too. Nothing misses it. And you see how complex it is, one, to be one of those 2,000 athletes who are competing in the Olympic track and field. And then to be one of the medalists, that's out of, that's out of this world, and there's some people say there's no such thing as luck. I think that there's a combination of things. I recall a keen observer of the Olympics one time telling me that if there are 12 athletes in a final, a middle distance final or a distance final, 6 of them you can discount right away because they've overtrained or they're injured. So you get down to that final 6. And then if you take a little time, you can see that there's 3 there that have what it takes. And then it comes down to who wants it the most. Now, Bill Toomey used the term who covets the medal the most. I always get a charge out of that. And but you see all these things. And now that we look back at it, you and I were watching the European indoors in Torun this year. And it was about 3:00 in the morning in Wisconsin when I saw Marcel run that 60. And that's the first time I became aware of him. And I went back and pulled up his results. I'm going, oh God, I've seen him race 5 times, And it's fascinating to me how athletes put the story together. And then I read about his family, and it was fascinating. He's trying to have a relationship with his father, but his mother, who is 100% Italian, and he says he's the American part of him is his fast muscles, fast twitch muscles, and everything else is Italian. And I think that's really cool. It's to me, it's fascinating.
Yeah. Just going back to your comment on luck, wasn't it the great South African golfer Gary Player said, the funny thing is, the more I practice, the luckier I get.
Yes, that's true. So, John Powell, who was an American discus thrower, and I believe still has the record for the oldest guy to get a world championship medal in the discus. I think he was 38 when he got he won his last bronze. I asked him one time, because he was an assistant coach at the school that I coached at Foothill. And I said, what does it take to be a great discus thrower? And he said, 40,000 spins a year. And I said, oh my gosh. And he goes, 40,000 spins. And I said, are you talking about muscle memory? And he goes, yes and no. He said, you get it into your system, you keep it focused, it becomes very natural for you. And you look at these athletes from Christian Taylor, Pablo Pichardo, and how they have such a lovely rivalry when, they're both healthy. And then you look at Curly and Jacobs. Those were amazing races. And, a lot of people, half of China thought that Su Bingtan was going to win that 100 after his semi, and what's exciting to me is that the quality of our sport is such that there's always 3 to 5 people who can win a major race or a major championship, and it's one of those things that you kind of go, oh my gosh, So you talked about Marcel in the 100, the 110-meter hurdles, the women's 800. What was the 4th shock?
Well, my 4th shock was the women's 4x400. The shock was not that US won it, but the team that they put out in the final, Sydney McLaughlin, Alison Felix, Delilah Mohammed, and Ating Mu, arguably not one 400 flat runner among them. I know Alison has done quite a lot, but I mean, Alison for me is a 200 runner. We get two hurdlers and an 800. I mean, isn't that a fascinating group of people to put together to run the 4x4?
You know, what's interesting to me about it is the health of how they do the 4x4. And actually, I think the women put together in the US put their 4x4 team together much better than the men's do. I heard a side that just some very confusing things about the men's 4x1, almost like they gave it no support at all. And it's so embarrassing that you have such good athletes who can't get a baton around the track, and it's going to haunt them the rest of their lives. But it's not fair when you have one workout, or two workouts, and I just, for the life of me, do not understand our friends at USATF who don't take more control of that. Because if I'm Nike and I'm popping, $40 million a year over 25 years, I want my money's worth. And how many Olympics are you going to put up with that the U.S. unnecessarily drops the baton?
Mm-hmm.
It's just...
It couldn't be more different in our side of the pond, because, I'll give you a specific example. Des Bryant said to me after the 2019 World Championship that she had only taken the baton twice from the girl before her in the relay. You look at somebody like Dean Smith and Daryl Nita, they've probably done baton changes 200 times. Because, first of all, we have consistency in the squad. People are chosen at the beginning of the year to be in the relay squad. And we have regular practices where they will go away for a week to practice as a relay squad. And this is happening year on year. And so we have identified that as a medal target, and we work on it. So that, the thinking is simply that if we have a sprinter who is perhaps half a second slower than the American or the Jamaican, well, if we can be slicker in the two changeovers, perhaps we can make up some of that time.
Yeah, no, I thought that was brilliant, because you look at it and you see so many less than stellar baton passes, especially on the U.S. team. And it's really the exception on some of the other teams. Now, the Jamaicans claim that they don't practice, which I think is absolute BS. Those kids have been together since they were 16 years old, and so those are the kind of things that, you wonder what the issue is, and I remember when there was a group of 4 Frenchmen about 1991 or 93, maybe it was 93. They had trained together for 5 or 6 years. The best of them had run 10:08, and they broke the Santa Monica Track Club's world record at the 4x1. And the way they did it was their passes were exceptional. And, when you've got a guy running 9.8, but because of the pass, it's 998 or 1002, it makes a big difference, you know. And the passes sometimes would make us cringe, you know. And then when the U.S. has that, when the U.S. has the attitude that, well, no one's going to beat them in the 4x4, well, guess what? Some tiny little countries, Trinidad and Tobago, and the Bahamas, and have shown them that, hey guys, you know what? Be careful, and it adds excitement. I mean, I think those things are fantastic. I also thought that it was very interesting how well Jody Williams did this year, but also how she moved up from the 200 to the 400. And I thought that was, and how she's developed 4x4 runner too. And what's interesting to me is how your team, and this is more the rule than the exception, allows athletes to develop, knows the athletes who just, it's like when Martin Rooney is his top. Martin may be going out and running a 45-2 on an open 400, but there was something about that baton that could put him at 44-3, 44-4, and the guy just was made for the 4x4, and you had several guys like that, and the program that you guys did works for Great Britain, and what you're going to hear over here from Americans, well, may have worked for Great Britain, but it's not going to work for the U.S. Well, you don't know. We've got to find a system that works, and we don't have it yet. So we've got to look at different things, and it's the Italians, look how well they did. It was just all four of the relays were a lot of fun, and the mixed relay was too. But I think that the thing that was missing for me from the Olympics, as you and I have talked, were the fans. Now, it was really fun to see all those screaming Italian athletes behind Chiamberi when he was high jumping, and watching our friend Mr. Jacobs in the 100 meters. My gosh, those things were fabulous. And TV did a nice way of kind of helping us, not realizing there were few fans, but I think the biggest thing of all was that we needed a sporting event this summer. I applaud Japan for doing it, but they've done it at some cost. I mean, right now, they canceled the Tokyo Marathon, just canceled it, because they were worried about people getting sick. And it's just, and now we've gone through Berlin, London, Chicago, Boston. They had a virtual Tokyo Marathon on the 17th. I've got it, and then we got to see what happens there. And then they've got New York coming up, in early November. And, one of the unusual stories coming out of the marathons this fall is Shalane Flanagan, who ran a 2:38 in Berlin, 2:35 in, where was that, London, and then a 2:46 in Chicago, and a 2:40 in Boston. That may have been her best performance of the whole thing, because Boston is such a tough course on your legs. It doesn't let up. So I think that the virtual races, let me ask you a question, because we haven't talked about this at all. What do you feel about these virtual races?
Well, people obviously like them because a lot of people do them. I had a friend who's a good club runner who did the virtual London twice last year. She did it on the April day on her own, and then she officially did it in the fall day, when the elite race was taking place. But then she did the real race this year, and I think there's no comparison. I mean, I suppose the way London was doing, and actually you could get acknowledged and be in the official results if you did the virtual and you did it on the day. Excuse me. So that I think there's a place for it, and it just gets more people running, and particularly with London being oversubscribed every year anyway.
Yeah, no. I think it's going to stay around. I think that people seem to like it. I think there are going to be. I went to a race 2 weeks ago, the Rock and Roll San Jose, which has been around for 15 years. And it's the first time it'd been around in 2 years. And the Rock and Roll series has been through several owners. There was a huge turnout. But I thought that Rock and Roll did a less than spectacular job of sharing the enthusiasm of running. And you get spoiled going to some of the major events. You know, in Boston, my friends told me that no one was going into the expo. People did, but it was very, isolated, and they did a lot of things outdoors. We're not back yet, we're getting there, and people have to be patient about it. The Olympics was fantastic. I mean, I'm planning to do the World Champs, Commonwealth, and European Champs next summer. And I'm looking at trying to do the last couple weeks, the last 2 weeks of the World Indoor Circuit, and then go to Belgrade. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how things work, and we're just going to, right now I've got to get a second booster because I took the Johnson & Johnson, the one, and they now want us to get a booster. So I will get that stuff so I can travel, and see your shining face back in Birmingham, perhaps at the indoor on the 19th, So it's just, well, dear friend, you have made it 39 minutes and 25 seconds. We've got the time. We're becoming almost professional, Stuart.
Yeah.
You think after 72 of these things, but thank you again, my friend, for your time. Okay. Thank you for doing it at the end of the evening. I know your lovely wife cares for you and would love to watch, a midsummer murder mystery or something in the evening. So have a great evening. Thank you again. I will see you next week. This is Larry Eder and Stuart Weir. This was Athletics Chat 72. Thank you for enjoying it with us and loving the sport, and please stay safe. Well, hello, sports fans. This is the Athletics Chat 72 epilogue. This is where Larry spouts off for 4 to 10 minutes. I'm going to try to do it under 5 minutes today. And you know the drill. I'm Larry Eder. I'm the editor of RunBlogRun, and I'm in San Jose, California right now. I live in Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin as well. And when it's not a pandemic, I can be anywhere. Stuart Weir is in Oxford, England, the intellectual capital of the world. And Stuart is our European editor, our European correspondent. And he writes 150 times a year at least for us. Plus, he's done over 70 podcasts with us as well. So, he's out there. He's a keen observer, and he's a lot of fun to be around. I miss being at meets with him. He's got a good sense of humor. But today we were talking about some of the top Olympic performances, but also some of the biggest shocks. And I just wanted to run them by you. I'm going to write something up on this, but Stuart and I had some fun with this today. We're going to start out with, though, there were 3 Kenyan athletes, 2 who were killed due to domestic violence, and 1 who committed suicide due to depression, possible mental illness. It highlights that even among elite athletes, these issues are big. Agnes Tira was the woman who's gotten the huge amount of publicity, and they're planning her funeral. And our friend Justin Legat is helping with that and our memorial service. It's just terrible. Domestic violence happens every day, everywhere around the world. and it's still not taken seriously. And neither is mental illness. I've been going to a therapist for, 12 of the last 15 years, and it's changed my life. As a survivor of sexual abuse, and also with some other issues that a lot of us have just because living, it's great to talk to somebody. And if you don't get that through your religious leaders or through friends, talking to a professional is a big deal. And I encourage people to do that. I also encourage people to, if you know of domestic violence or you have someone close, try to be there for them, try to help them, talk to somebody. The key is beginning to have a conversation. We're going to try to put up some resources for domestic abuse and also for mental illness on RunBlogRun in the next week or so. But Agnes Tierup was a fine athlete, and it just tears me up at the age of 25 that she's no longer with us. So let's talk about the top Olympic events. And these came from Stuart, and I think they're brilliant. I don't have any problems with any of them. First, the 400-meter hurdles. Karsten, Warholm, and Ray Benjamin. What an amazing race. How exciting it was. The buildup was great. Both fine athletes. Karsten, new world record. Ray, a new American record. The sadness in Rye's face, where he felt he hadn't delivered, just broke my heart. I thought they both over-delivered. It was an incredible event, and bravo to both of them. The women's 400 hurdles with Cindy McLaughlin, Delia Muhammad, and Femke Bol. Oh my gosh, fantastic. Incredible athletes giving it their all. There's so few times that all of it comes together in such an amazing race, and that was exciting. The 400 women's flat. Shawnee Miller-Weibo won. She should have won in 2019, but there was a drug cheat in the race. And, I didn't ask Shawnee exactly what she felt, but after 2019, she showed class, and so did her coach. But that was total bullshit. That woman, the winner in 2019, should have been Shawnee Miller. And that's just the way it is. So for her to win in 2021, it was glorious. She had a rough 200, but you know what? She had to put her effort into the 400. Allison Felix medaling. First time I saw Allison medal was back in 2003. By that time she had made 5 covers of Caltrack and Running News. She's been a lovely person since she was, probably born. I've watched her since she was 14, and the way she handles herself, the things that she's done for the sport, things she's done for women, the role model she is. And it's, sometimes it's frustrating that TV focuses on stories that are so obvious. Allison deserves everything, the accolades she gets. She's done a lot of good things for the sport. And Shawnee Miller-Weibo is amazing, and one of my favorite athletes. I just want to see her do the heptathlon, and I think I love pictures of her and Maisel Weibo, her husband, Michael Weibo, her husband, and the decathlete. They're just very sweet together, and they're very classy, and it's some of the good things of the sport. So those are the things that warm the cockles of my heart. Then the 1500s, where do we begin? I mean, the men's 1500, Mr. Ingebrigtsen over Tim Chariot, Jakob Ingebrigtsen timed everything perfectly. He's well trained by his father. His brothers have helped. It's a family affair, as Sly and the Family Stone would say. What a fantastic 1500. And Josh Kerr, you're going to see more medals out of Josh. That last 200 meters was mind-boggling, and 400ths of a second behind Timothy Chariot. Josh Kerr, that story is not got the credibility that it deserves. We will be doing some things on Josh and Danny Mackey and how that story came about over the last 2 years. The women's 1500. Oh my gosh. Faith Kipyegon, I love Faith. Coming back from a baby, ran some good 800s, some amazing 1500s. And it just was amazing. And and then we've got the men's high jump, Jambiri Tambiri, and our friend Mutaz Barshim. Amazing performances. And that's where we're going to leave it. I'm going to tease you a little bit with Athletics Chat 72. Thank you to Mike Deering for being the production manager. And thank you for watching our shows. Stay safe.